How's it going, everyone? It's Avi from Mars One Drop 1000. Today is January 14th, 2021, and today we're going to focus on this major United States snowstorm that's going to bring up to a foot of snow in the Midwest as well as the Northeast this weekend. But before I begin, make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather-related content. Make sure to like if you like this video, and make sure to turn on post notifications if you want to see even more weather-related content. So let's begin by first taking a look at the Gfs model, where you see that there's a pretty strong mid-latitude cyclone located right around the Great Lakes region just south of Wisconsin and Minnesota, and there's a large swath of snow. This is around Friday morning, and keep in mind throughout Minnesota there's going to be right at the heart of rush hour, so watch out if you're planning to travel, or don't even travel at all, because there's going to be some areas where the snow bands will be heavy at times. And like I said, it could dump a lot of snow and could dump up to a foot in localized areas, I would say, or at the very most, probably around 10 inches in some areas. So you see that it's a pretty strong storm. There's a large swath of snow that pretty much swallows the entire Minnesota, Iowa, and Wisconsin. And keep in mind, on the western portion of this storm, the winds are going to be very strong as a result of this pressure gradient between this ridge that's located right here and this low pressure system. And since they're fairly close together, and since this low pressure system is fairly strong, it has a lot of convection and rising air with it, which means the pressures in the surface are low. That means that all this higher pressure, the higher air pressure, wants to move into this lower pressure area, and that's going to create strong northwesterly winds. That's not only going to bring wind gusts up to 60 to maybe 70 miles per hour in some areas in the Midwest, but also it's going to bring down all that Arctic air to create a polar vortex and right that's going to impact the eastern half of the United States and bring much colder temperatures throughout all the eastern half of the United States. Temperatures well below average, and it'll also bring the possibility of blowing snow, especially on the western side of this storm. So you could see a lot of drifting. So, and that could be a problem when you're shoveling, because if you're shoveling and then the snow keeps drifting, it's almost at that point pointless when the snow keeps drifting. So you need to keep in mind with the strong winds on the western side of this storm. But if we progress in the GFS model, you see that it doesn't move very fast. It's still within Friday night, it only moved several 100 miles, which may sound like a lot, but in terms of weather, it only moved around. In terms of weather, that's not very much, because usually mid-latitude cyclones move fairly quickly because of the jet stream and the strong unstable air, making weather move a lot faster, especially during the winter. But in this case, it's going to move fairly slowly through southerly, as it's going to be blocked by this ridge that's currently in the eastern half of the United States. And it won't be until later on Saturday we begin to see that storm accelerate a little bit, and then by Saturday morning it should be out of most of the Midwest, and there should be areas of snow showers right around the Ohio River Valley. I don't expect it to dump much snow, maybe around an inch is most likely in those areas, maybe less than that, maybe even no snow, but I would expect mainly an inch in those areas. But then you see the focus shifts towards the northeast, where we begin to see that convection and that precipitation move into the northeast, because this polar vortex is going to, since this polar vortex is obviously going to bring very cold Arctic air further south, it's going to eventually interact with the warmer Atlantic Ocean water that's just off the coast of the East Coast pretty much. And as it does so, the denser air is going to force a lot of that lighter, less dense air upwards, since this denser air is going to try to move into where the air is a lot lighter, and there's a lot less pressure, and as a result it's going to force a lot of that water vapor up, because since in environments that are much warmer, that typically means that the air molecules are moving a lot faster, and since they're moving a lot faster and bouncing around a lot more, that means that there's a lot more space for the air to hold more water, and which is the reason why you typically correlate very warm temperatures with more humid air, since the air molecules are always moving and they have a lot of space to contain a lot more water than, let's say, much colder air where the air is very dense and the air molecules are very tightly packed together, which so and as the cold air tries to move into this warmer, lighter air, it's going to rise, and we see all that convection, and and there's going to be just enough convection in this area right along the east coast once it encounters the Atlantic that a new low pressure system will form. So this original low pressure system that is expected to dump a heavy amount of snow in the Midwest will eventually pretty much jump into this area of new convergence that's going to form just off the east coast, since the convergence in this area, the convection in this area, will be a lot stronger and a lot more defined than the convection right here, since this area is going to be under a much more unstable environment to have a lot more convection than this area. So this low pressure system will eventually just jump into this area, and then a newly formed low pressure system will form that's even stronger, and that will be the primary force that's going to dump potentially over a foot of snow all along the northeast. So it's expected to be a major event for a lot of you guys in the northeast. There's still a lot of uncertainty. We're still around 3 days out, maybe a little less than that. So the exact details are still unknown. The exact snowfall amount is still unknown. Well, it's always unknown, but the general snow forecast is still, for the most part, uncertain. So we still have to just wait and see how this forecast changes. However, I will say with confidence that the primary threat from this storm will be in the interior northeast. I don't expect New York City or even Boston to get involved with this. As it seems pretty much almost impossible at this point that the storm moves well further south to bring much of any accumulating snow in those cities. So this shouldn't primarily be a interior northeast threat, but it should be still a major interior northeast threat where you could see up to a foot of snow, because let's take a look at the GFS and you see the heavy snow in the higher elevations of northern New England, as well as the Adirondack Mountains. And the track will be important in terms of how much snow you guys receive, because in the GFS's models track, the storm's a lot faster, it moves a lot more quicker, so obviously there's going to be less time for that snowfall to accumulate. However, if we compare that to the European model, I noticed that the European model moves a little bit slower, and also the low pressure is a little bit more northward, which is interesting. But I expect with the European model that in this scenario, in the European model's case, you will experience more snow in northern New England and a lot of New York, upstate New York, because the storm is going to move slower as a result. Let's compare the GFS model 72 hours from now to the European 72 hours from now. So you see the GFS 72 hours from now is already off the coast of New England. Compare that to the European model where the low pressure is still well inland and it still has a lot of cold air to work with, and change a lot of that rain into snow for a lot of upstate New York and a lot of the interior northeast portion. So this won't be a very fast mover to limit the snowfall for you guys enough to not make it a major snowfall threat. So however, I will say in either scenario, it's likely going to be a major snowfall threat, but the question I want to answer is how major, because in the European model, it's a little bit slower, so I expect it. So in this scenario, I'd expect a little bit more snow, but in the GFS, it's a little quicker, so I'd expect a little bit less snow from this. And in terms of the strength of this, they're mostly similar for the most part. Maybe, they're pretty much exactly the same. Maybe a couple millibar of a difference, but it isn't anything major or that's going to completely change the game. So for the most part, I would say that both the computer models are agreeing that this primarily going to be an interior northeast threat, because a lot of that moisture is going to be a lot of that moisture is mainly only going to change into snow in the interior portions, and by the time the cold air reaches a lot of the cities like New York City and Boston, it's the cold air is going to be so dense that it won't really have any sort of water vapor to create a lot more convection or precipitation in those cities, as it's just going to be too as this air parcel is going to be just too cold for any sort of precipitation to occur or any sort of snow to occur in Boston or New York City once that cold air filters in on the backside of this storm. So this should primarily be a interior northeast threat at this point. So in terms of the snowfall forecast, I'm expecting here's my total here's my pretty much my total snowfall forecast for this storm, and you see that for a lot of the Midwest, I'm expecting 6 to 12 inches of snow, and I don't think this is going to be necessarily a heavy snow maker. Well, not it is going to be a heavy snow maker, because obviously 6 to 12 inches is considered a heavy snow maker. But what I'm trying to say is that I don't expect the snowfall rate to be that high specifically from this storm system. I think the main reason why it's going to snow this much right around the Great Lakes region through Minnesota, Iowa, and Wisconsin is because it's going to be very slow moving, and the snow is going to just stay over the same area for nearly 24 hours, and that's going to pile up the snow. Obviously, that's going to accumulate the snow over time, and it's going to accumulate it, I would say, in a range around 6 to 12 inches of snow throughout a lot of the Great Lakes region, and then 3 to 6 just to the east of that, just to the south of that, as I expect by the time it moves a little bit further southward, it's going to lose a lot of its convection a little bit, because it won't really be close to any sort of body of water and to really create any new convection once it's right around the Ohio River Valley. And also, a lot of its convection is going to shift more towards the east, and this low pressure you see right here is going to weaken and then jump right off the coast of the northeast, and this is where pretty much most of the convection will occur outside of this area in the Midwest, where I think in some areas in the higher elevations, 12 to 24 inches is expected. And however, in most of the lower elevations in the interior northeast, I would expect a lesser amount of 6 to 12 inches. But in the highest elevations, over a foot of snow I'm expecting for you guys. So that's a major event. And even 6 to 12 inches is major. And you guys definitely should take precaution while traveling, because 6 to 12 inches could just cause havoc on the roads, and I don't want you guys to underestimate it just because it's less than a foot of snow. And then 3 to 6 throughout Michigan, throughout Wisconsin, as there's going to be a little bit of a snow band going over northern Wisconsin that's going to give more than 2 inches of snow, right around 3 to 6 inches. And in the higher elevations of West Virginia and Pennsylvania, right around the Appalachian Mountain Range, it should be cold enough for a lot of that rain that New York City and Boston and the cities are going to get into snow. So this should be a pretty major event for the entire Northeast. In Minnesota, you definitely need to prepare. You might want to make second thoughts of going out Friday morning, and especially throughout the day Friday in general, because 6 to 12 inches is quite a major snowstorm for you guys, and you want to get those shovels ready, you want to get those salts ready, and do not travel when it's extremely bad out unless it's an extreme emergency. And I want to advise that I want to keep you guys safe and prepared during this snowstorm from the Midwest all the way to the Northeast, because again, this most likely will be a major snowstorm for a lot of you guys. So let's take a look at the Futurecast Radar to give you guys a better idea of the timing of this. So by the time you're watching this video, you're going to see that the snow is already over Minnesota, it's over Wisconsin a little bit, and we're seeing moderate snow showers extend on the northern portion of Minnesota. However, this will shift a little bit further southward, and you begin to see that convection definitely widen as we're going to see a little bit more of a bow echo form as a result of a strengthening mid-latitude cyclone, where we're going to see the cold air filter in, and we're going to see just enough convection on the eastern portion of the storm to garner sort of a mid-latitude cyclone appearance to create a lot more convection on the northwestern portion of the storm and to create enough of a snow swath on the northwestern portion. And you see that pretty much by Thursday night, it should be very bad for a lot of Minnesota. You see some of the heavier snowfall bands forming, and for a lot of Minnesota and for Minneapolis, this should be and for a lot of Wisconsin, this should start right around Thursday afternoon and then extending through Thursday night. It continues and then through through early Friday morning, eastern Iowa, a lot of Minnesota is getting impacted, and there's a little bit of a dry spot over Des Moines and Milwaukee, so you guys will miss out on some of that snow in the morning, which is good news. You don't want to see that snow accumulate as much. And then you see it begins a weekend Friday, as this storm doesn't really have a lot more instability to work with. Well, I wouldn't say instability. It isn't really going to be close to a body of water, the warm body of water, to create a lot more convection and precipitation. And it won't be until it encounters the warmer Atlantic Ocean, till it continues to get more convection and precipitation, and you see thunderstorm activity, and this will create a bigger snowfall event in the northeast, as this low pressure you see right here will jump into the east coast and bring a lot more snow in this area. And let's take a look at the wind forecast for a little bit, because I also want to emphasize how strong the winds will be. That's for mostly the Midwest, as the wind threat will primarily be a Midwest threat, the strongest of the winds. The Northeast will experience some stronger winds too, but it won't be to the extent as, let's say, the Midwest region. So let's zoom back to a little bit earlier. So this, as of right now, you see the winds are already starting all throughout Montana and extending to Wyoming, because this ridge over right around the northwestern Pacific is already fairly close to this low pressure system, and a lot of those clumped together air molecules want to move to an area where it's a lot more spacious, which is in this lower pressure area. And as it does so, the winds increase as the air molecules attempt to move into this spacious lower pressure area. And you see that the winds will increase as we even further as it heads over the Great Plains, where it won't have much friction over the Great Plains for the wind to slow down over a large area. And these strong winds could extend as far south as Texas, so don't keep your guard down in the southern United States just because the low pressure is going to be fairly far up north, because you could see windy conditions in that area and up to 60 to 70 mile per hour wind gusts right around the Dakotas and Nebraska. And that could topple down trees, that could take down power lines, so power might be out. Stay prepared for a power outage, because it could very well be possible with winds these strong impacting the Great Plains. So keep that in mind and stay prepared for a strong wind event in the Midwest. But anyways, guys, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather-related content. Make sure to like if you like this video, and make sure to turn on post notifications if you want to see even more weather-related content. And I hope you guys have a good day, a good night, a good morning whenever you're watching this.